It was June 21st that we ventured off in a van with the 5 lovely ladies doing robotics research at Olin this summer to visit our own robotics research alum at Harvard. Oh, and by the way, you're watching episode 4 of the PGP Summer Vlog series.
My name is Leif Jentoft. I graduated in 2009, and I'm working as a grad student in the Harvard Biorobotics Lab. So the primary focus of our research is how to make robot hands cheaper, simpler, and more effective for real-world applications. So the science of how do you make things simpler while still making them work well. One of the big things we're trying to study is how to use passive mechanics to simplify the problem. If you're trying to grasp an object, sometimes you can use a mechanism to make that easier. We're also studying how to use low-cost sensors to try and understand enough about the object and how little can you understand about the object to still get a good grasp and still perform interesting manipulations. They're extremely, extremely strong. And so, some people are worried about like this stiff servo-driven fingers breaking. They don't care. I didn't really expect to be a researcher long term. Originally, I've always been interested in the intersection between technology and the application of it to real people's lives. But graduating from Olin, I've done research in the summer beforehand, working as a intern or as a summer student in the Biorobotics Lab here. And following that, I kind of like this field. Robotics is pretty fast moving, so a lot of our stuff is still more focused on designing something that works. A good paper comes up with something fundamental about here's how things work and demonstrates that, whereas a good application or a good engineering project comes up with something that solves an end user's need. Grad school is good if you have a bit of patience. You want to understand the edges of what can be done, and you want to work long hours on very, very interesting stuff. Look really, really carefully at the advisors. If you've got a good position in a good lab with a good advisor, it can rock. Another thing that's very important for doing good work in grad school is being very self-motivated. And so for me, I always have problems with batting off too many projects, but I've never really had a problem saying something's interesting, and that's been a great match for grad school. You've got a lot of latitude about what you study. You've got a lot of latitude as well about how hard you work and when you work. And so having that together with these really great resources of tools to work and access to interesting problems has been a blast.
And robotics is especially interesting because it lets you tie everything from the user experience all the way through to solving a problem that can't be solved any other way.
So Olin has a long history of very rich robotics research projects, and they're largely created by and driven by the students working on them. When the students are first starting the curriculum, the robots are small and simple, and by the time they finish and do scope capstone projects in robotics, they're working at the level of people that have been building robots for 5 or 10 years.
I thought Olin did a very good job of teaching opportunity identification. So for research, a lot of the big question is, where can I use existing tools to make a difference on the active edge of the problem front? And Olin spent a lot of time not just on what are the tools themselves, but on where do you use them effectively through open-ended projects, through the design focus, through the entrepreneurship focus. And for me, that's been an excellent match to going on to research, because a lot of the same problems still exist. You also end up having a lot of spiral learning as well, and a lot of do learn, where oftentimes I'll be trying to build a system and I don't know the equations for it, I don't know the field. And so understanding how do you learn something becomes really important, because oftentimes going in you don't know what it should be, but then you look at it, and if it's research, ideally there ought not to be any answer yet. And so understanding how do you approach that process, how do you learn stuff when you need to learn it, has been really, really valuable.
We do robotics here at Olin exactly the same way you would do it at a graduate school. So by getting proficient at robotics at Olin, you become pre-trained for robotics in graduate school. Snotbot, for example, has been tried by other schools in the past at the graduate level. We're actually making more progress than they have, and I'm very proud of that.
I get to see the impact of my work pretty directly. If I don't build it, it's not there. The applications seem pretty exciting if you look at what you can use a good robot hand for. They're talking about making the elderly maintain their independence in their own homes for longer. Likewise, you look at like disaster relief. Robots can provide a huge difference there. One of the big limiting factors there is what can you grasp, because right now we can see pretty well, we can move around pretty well, we can navigate decently, but we can't manipulate the world. And so the project has a pretty high potential impact. I've got really, really cool problems to work on that if they make a difference, or if they're solved, will make a big difference. We've got a little company off the ground right now commercializing a tactile sensor that's cheaper and simpler and just about as sensitive as other things on the market right now, and we've got a lot of orders for that. I kind of like that space where you get a chance to connect technology up to someone's end application. And so, God willing, I'd like to work in something building hands to the the same sort of space. Work hard on interesting problems. Like, at the end of the day, trying to get to the head of stuff is really interesting. And there's oftentimes transition points where just by working a little bit harder you get access to something really, really interesting. That makes a huge difference. And so being on the lookout for those and then doing what you do well ends up being a power that you can use to then direct your path. Why do I love it? Well, I get to build robots. They pay me to build robots. It's pretty straightforward.